What is going on, guys? Welcome to today's video. In this one, I'm going to be showing you how to do the turbo crank mod. It's not that hard to do, but we do have to basically disassemble the entire engine here. I have a full circle crank in my hand right here, but to start off this engine, I'm going to go for the turbo crank mod. It's the great debate, which one is better. We'll probably end up trying both, but this one isn't technically balanced, and that's where I've kind of researched the biggest issues. If you don't have a balanced full circle crank, could have some problems and it might not work correctly, but let's get started. You're gonna have to stay tuned until the end, but you may get away with taking off this pole starter side, but I'm gonna be doing it here just in case we do have to. I'll show you why when we get under the flywheel. Rather than jamming my piston this time with a screwdriver, I'm taking your guys' advice and just using a rattle gun here. Now we can take the ignition coil off so that we're able to remove the flywheel with a screwdriver. Then you can stick your screwdriver in the slot right here and pretty much rotate it back and forth while twisting the flywheel over a few times, and it should just pop off. Now when the flywheel pops off, you're going to get exposed your timing key. We did the rocket key install video, which the rocket key is turned to the right for advanced timing, and this is what I was talking about. We may not have to take off the side. The screw ends are not on this side, they're on the clutch side, but we may have to anyways because of this, but I'm going to find out. Let's keep going. Next, for our half engine now, we're going to remove the big bore side, which is just these 4 Allen heads. You don't even need to take off the spark plug. Now I'm just going to be gently putting the flywheel back on to rotate the piston to get it back into the engine. That way we can remove the cylinder. Then we can go ahead and take that flywheel back off and make sure that you remove your key there so you don't lose it. Now we can take the C-clip off of the end of the pin on the piston here to go ahead and get that piston off. So if you guys remember the big bore kit install video, they sent over that wrong bearing. They actually resent over the correct one, and now I can show you that. So the one on the bottom is not correct, it's wider. We were using that stock one, which wouldn't have been the best option, and let me show you it in the rod here. So, boom, check it out. Not loose anymore. We're going to be using that one now when we reassemble the engine. And of course for that, I wasn't worried about the piston moving left to right, but that bearing is still free in there, so it could have been riding on either the left side more or the right side because it's skinnier. So this one being wider, it'll sit nicely in this gap right here. Now that we have that piston off, even if I wanted to, I couldn't install this full circle crank yet because this is a 12mm opening right here. My piston and pin bearing is 10 millimeters, so it would be basically shaking around a lot in this bigger opening right here. With that being said though, we can order a 12 millimeter bearing, piston, and pin to make that work out. Now we can go to the other side of the engine and start to remove the clutch housing. To remove the clutch, it's easy. It's just these 4 Allen heads right here. When you get those unscrewed, it just slides right off. The clutch is the same as the flywheel, using a 10mm socket with the rattle gun. To remove the clutch, I'm using a puller. I don't want to use a screwdriver for this like the flywheel because there's really no opening to stick the screwdriver to go ahead and wedge it out without potentially damaging the edge of the case, which is very easy to do with these engines. Remember, 50 bucks, guys. So to use the puller, it makes it a heck of a lot easier. You guys can find these local for yourself, rent them, or buy them for yourself, but mine's kind of rigged up. Unfortunately, the center screw isn't long enough, so I had to screw the bolt, the 10mm bolt on the clutch a little bit and put a socket on there and an extension. That way I could actually reach the center to go ahead and use the puller correctly to tighten it up and pull it. And you'll see here it'll break off, and that's what I was talking about. They're usually pretty tight on here. Now we can finally move on to the carburetor, and that means taking off the air filter first. When you get that off, you'll see the 2 Allen heads that attach the carburetor to the engine. When those are loosened, the carburetor should just pop right off. Now the intake manifold has to come off, which is another 4 Allen heads. Now with a little bit of effort, the reed should come off. I just stuck my fingernail under it and it popped right off, and we'll want to remove the gasket that's underneath the reed too. Lastly, on the clutch side, we can go ahead and remove the final bolts that keep the engine together. These are also Allen heads, of course. So far, I would say even if you're not trying to do this mod, check those case bolts because honestly it felt like some of those weren't even tight. I know it's a bit of a pain to take that clutch off, but it's worth it if you really care about your engine. Now guys, to get the 2 cases separated, there's 2 small pins, and I just went around on all 4 corners, you know, gently lifting up a bit, and it should just slide off right now, so let's pull it off. There's our crank, guys. Now we should be able to just push this side from here. There we go. Slide it right out, and There you have it. Now we can look at the cranks side by side, and they say that the full circle crank is supposed to have a longer stroke by about 2 to 3 millimeters, but I don't see it, guys. You can tell that's why I have you at this angle here, but maybe you can tell me otherwise, but they do say that there is a bunch of different versions that I've released on the full circle cranks, and I just have a feeling that I have a cheap one. Again, it was only 16 bucks. The eBay seller does swear by it, adding performance, but I'll be testing it at some point. But for now, we're just going to be doing the turbo crank. I wanted to do this side-by-side comparison though. Let me know any information that you guys might have about these full circles. And behind me is an entire 47cc engine disassembled, and now we can start actually sharpening the stock crank. So let's get into that next. So there's no reason to sharpen both ends of the crank, but it's easy to determine which side we do want to sharpen to make this effective. All you have to do is put the crank in one side of the engine. I have it on the clutch side, and basically mock it up as if it was together and turn it over forward. And you can tell by doing this, this is the side that we want to sharpen because it's going to be the cutting side. The back is not. I did a couple quick markings on the side that we're going to be angling, and this just gives me an idea of what I'm going for. That way I don't get mixed up in my head at all, and I know exactly what we need to do. If you're going to do the grinding yourself, I highly recommend a table vise. I'm not using one here because I felt that I wanted more control on the crank to be able to rotate it while I'm grinding it down. But please use a vise and use safety glasses. If you feel like you need gloves too, do that. Take all the safety precautions. This is a small crank you're grinding on, so stuff could go bad, and I want you guys to be safe about it. So I'm just working at this very slow, being patient about it, trying to mold that knifed edge on this crank here. And probably the number one thing to avoid while you're doing this is hitting anything else on the crank. We only want to be grinding the area that we're trying to sharpen out, because if you do nick another part of the crank, it honestly could be fatal for your engine. This is pretty tedious stuff here though. It's just going to be taking me a while to slowly work at this. I'm taking breaks every once in a while because the crank is getting kind of hot in my hand, but I'll skip to when we get this done so I can show you what we're looking at now. Alright guys, so you can see that I've pretty much got this one side done. Didn't take too long, but you can see from right there the idea that we're going for. That's nice and sharp compared to that, and that's going to be cutting really well through the air and fuel now in the engine. But it doesn't have to be too extreme, at least in my opinion. This, you can just tell from that angle again that that's really a lot sharper than our other side here. So I'm going to work on this other side here and match it up to this side. So it's the same thing on this side. We're just taking our time, being nice and patient about it. This is not one thing that you want to have a mistake happen on. It could be fatal, like I mentioned earlier. Alright guys, so I pretty much got the crank finished up here. It's looking really even now. Check out both sides just like that, and that's exactly what we want. I ended up bringing it down a bit here, going down in this area for both sides too, just to get that cut even better. But yeah, I mean, that's what we want right here. So I'm not going to show you guys the reassembly of the engine because I feel like whoever is going to attempt this mod will have no problem getting the engine back together properly. But let me show you the mock-up with our new turbo crank in there. Here it is in the case, and you can just tell this thing's going to cut the air and fuel a lot better. As it spins this way, it's going to turn faster and have a lot less drag. If I can actually turn it over with one hand here, right there, boom. That's going to slice that air and fuel a lot more efficiently now. And I actually weighed the crank before this, and it was 13.1. Now I have it on the scale. It's actually 13 clean. So we shaved a little bit off of the actual weight on the crank too. So that's going to pretty much do it for the mod for now, guys. I'm going to leave the engine probably disassembled, you know, most likely for the week to let you guys go ahead and flood the comments. Let me know your guys' opinions. Maybe there's someone out there that has experience actually running with this mod on the 47, I guess 49cc engines too, and I'd like to know, you know, is there modifications that I should do inside of the case now to make this flow even better, since we did change the angle on the crank. Let me know, guys. There's, you know, a lot of stuff that I need to learn still, but that's why I'm doing this community build, to get your guys' input and opinions. But I hope everyone enjoyed the mod, and if you're going to try it yourself, just keep checking the comment section on this video, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people with different other ideas and tips and tricks for to further this mod, I guess, make it even better. But again, thank you guys for watching. See you next time. Peace.